We do have an email question pertaining to that subject, and it comes from Gina. She says, how can you determine if someone was texting at the time that they hit you? And does that matter when it comes to a settlement amount? That's a good question because people are texting everywhere, especially behind the wheel.
And you see it. You can see it all the time.
Yes.
Even though, to the question, yes, it does matter. It matters a great deal. It matters both as to liability, and it does play into the damages side of the case because it's an aggravating factor. And you can generally get phone records and you can discover whether or not somebody was texting at the time of an accident. We have a law in Georgia that says you cannot text and drive at the same time. You can't even have a handheld device in your hands while you're driving. Now, if you do and you have a wreck, it makes it a lot easier to prove your case because that becomes what we call negligence per se, or negligence as a matter of law. And the court will charge that if you go to a jury trial. That is, an absolute right to show that the defendant was breaking the law, and that entered into the cause of the wreck. So, that's the answer to the question. Wendell, you want to weigh in on that?
Well, it's very similar to a DUI. In fact, a lot of studies have shown that a DUI maybe might not be as bad as texting and driving, that more wrecks are caused by texting and driving than drunk drivers. That it's just a problem everywhere. You stop at a traffic light turns green and you're behind a car and there's a delay in them taking off, and you can bet they're texting and they weren't watching the light.
Yes, indeed.
I will say this, Morgan, is, and from my perspective, it's purely anecdotal, but I think it's a problem of enforcement. As Wendell said, any red light or where you're stopped in traffic, you can see somebody texting. But I rarely ever see anybody pulled over for it. And I just don't think it's a law, the violation of which is simply not enforced as a general proposition.
I totally agree with you on that. I totally agree.
Makes me wish I was a law enforcement officer a lot of times.
Exactly.
I'd
Every
love
time you
to
see
give
it.
tickets to people.
But the thing that people are lulled into thinking they can break the law with impunity, nobody's going to do anything until they're in a wreck. Then when they're in a wreck and you get the records that show that, they got a problem. And they don't appreciate that.
I agree. That's a big, big, big problem. Carl Reynolds and Wendell Horne are our guests tonight. They're our attorneys that are answering your questions. We're talking about summer injury and the law. What's summer in Georgia without fireworks? When we come back, we're going to talk about when fireworks go wrong. Next, right here on Law Call.